Hey, good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a really great weekend. I thought I would start by showing you a couple of pictures from what I was doing this weekend. I was filming a PBS series in San Francisco, so I just thought I'd show you a couple little pictures of what was going on. But more importantly than that, I wanted to share just some insight about the psychoanalytic criticism. Before I do that, I have a couple of announcements. First of all, um, if you turned in your thinking about thinking paper and you were supposed to already have it back, I will have those back for you when I return on Wednesday, and you will have 1 week from Wednesday to make your revisions. So I don't want anyone to worry that they're going to miss a deadline or that their deadline is going to be shorter than they had anticipated. So that's the big thing. And the other thing is that I will be gone tomorrow as well, but I think you're going to be just fine. So today you're going to spend some time working together to kind of understand psychoanalytic criticism. And first of all, I just want to tell you about this criticism, that it's something that we will most often use when we try to apply it to characters and character motivation. We won't really try to apply it so much to um, authors as the information kind of says, but mostly to characters. There are a couple of things that are also really important in addition to the information on this sheet of paper. It's also important that you know that a lot of times psychoanalytic criticism has its origin in Freud and in symbols. So we will oftentimes use this criticism when we are trying to understand character motivations. 2, we have dreamlike sequences in text, or 3, there are highly symbolic sections of text, and those symbols may represent some of these psychological principles, okay? So really your goal today is to focus for the most part on the theory of anxiety and Freud's theory of personality. To understand, first of all, the difference between the id, the ego, and the superego, and I think probably a lot of you have already had background in that, so that's one thing. But I want to take a few minutes to talk about these theories of anxiety, because your job for today is to find examples of this in everyday life so that you can think about that as you apply it to the characters and to the texts. So the first one is denial. And this is where someone, refuses to acknowledge what's going on. And instead what they do is they have some kind of defense mechanism for that denial. Maybe they blame someone else. Maybe they act out in a certain way. So that's what you're looking for. The second one is fantasy, which really means that people use fantasy as a way to deal with their fears or deal with things that are unsettling or anxious for them. So if you think about the ways in which people may get online and use alter egos, that might be a way that they are trying to deal with their, Freud would say this is a way that they are maybe dealing with their anxiety through fantasy. The next one is intellectualization. So this is where someone, maybe they have a real disturbing emotional event, and the emotions are maybe so powerful that they can't deal with the emotions, and so they intellectualize it. Sometimes sometimes people who are doing this might seem cold, but perhaps they're not really cold people. It's just that they are dealing with whatever is the trigger in a very intellectual way. Regression is regressing to childlike behaviors, and so this is where a 10, 11, 12-year-old throws a temper tantrum the same way that my 2-year-old would do. So that's regressing to infantile behaviors. And there are other ways to do this too. And sometimes we see this portrayed kind of in funny ways in movies, and sometimes really serious, spooky ways as well. The next one is identification. So this is kind of like Stockholm Syndrome, if you've heard of that, where someone in order to deal with whatever is creating the anxiety, they identify with it. So Stockholm Syndrome is like Elizabeth Smart, who had to identify with the people who kidnapped her in order for her psyche to survive. So that's what identification is. Overcompensation is probably one we see a lot. This is where someone is really feels low confidence in one area, low self-esteem in one area, and so they really act out in another. And sometimes this can be positive and sometimes it can be negative. So it can be the person who gets really nervous in a crowd, and so then they need to be the center of attention, and they might end up embarrassing themselves, or they might end up becoming a great comedian. You know, it's kind of, it depends on how it all falls into place. The last one here is sublimation. And this is where someone has a desire that is culturally, societally unacceptable, and so they send it to a different place in which it is. So somebody who maybe has real violent tendencies might sublimate that in towards boxing or UFC stuff. So we kind of have to think about, they take these desires and they put them in a socially acceptable place. So that is really what is most key here for you today. And that's really what I want you to focus on, coming up with additional examples of these. And then if you, because a lot of you are in psychology, if you know of other conditions, descriptors, things like that you think might be helpful for us as a class to kind of have and know about, I need you to add those to your list here, and then save this list and leave it with the sub so that I can take a peek at this when I get back. All right. If you have any questions, of course, send me stuff on email, and I'll be glad to get back to you. Have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.